Well, crack open a tepid Genesee and watch the pictures as they travel through your neighbor's Wi-Fi. It's the Rees Company. I'm Steve Rees, the bull of American broadcasting, alongside the great Chris Morganti. How are you, Chris?
I'm good, Steve. What do we have on the docket this week?
We have a couple of things tonight. Our main attraction is another British film, a short film about safety to check out. Now, but first...
Is this another presentation of the Royal Society for Prevention of Accidents?
No, this was not made in association with that society.
Okay.
But first, I want to take a look at a segment from Blue Peter, the long-running BBC Kids program. Now, this is from 1976, and two of the show's presenters, John Noakes and Peter Purvis, they're about to introduce the youth of Britain to a new technological development.
The sort of phone you've probably got at home. It's got a handset, a curly bit of wire that goes down to here, and then a cable that goes all the way to the telephone exchange.
Well, I've got the other telephone here, and it looks more like a shoulder bag, really, than a proper telephone. It's got its own portable handset here, which has its own dial built into it. And the thing that makes it so unusual is if I get up and walk around, you'll see that there are absolutely no trailing cables of any kind. It's not connected to anything at all, because it's got its own built-in transmitter and receiver.
Now, believe it or not, Chris, what we've seen here is a primitive cell phone.
Yeah, I gathered that.
And we have a close-up of that last shot we saw of Peter holding the cell phone. Yeah, let's keep that up for a bit. What stage of development was this?
Early on?
Very early on. In fact, I wouldn't even call this a prototype. I'll tell you what development stage this looks like. And if I had to guess what the story might be behind it, we can come back to us. See, the previous Thursday to what we just watched, this crazy guy down the pub stood up and he declared, "I'm going to make calls from my hip." And nobody has any idea on that day what this guy's on about. But they're not fazed because Seymour, his name is Seymour, Chris. They're used to this from him. He does it all the time. He makes crazy declarations and then just splits. But this time, Seymour means business. He goes straight home. He rips the phone right off the wall, shoves it into his wife's purse, and leaves the receiver dangling off the side. Now, as far as Seymour is concerned, his work is done. And by this time next year, he'll be a millionaire. So he goes down to the headquarters of British Telecom. Now, he's a familiar face there because every so often he shows up to make a minimum payment to have his service switched back on.
Sure.
But today, Seymour, he demands to see one of the higher-ups. In fact, that's how he phrases it, too. I demand to see one of the higher-ups. He doesn't have a department in mind or a particular position, just someone higher up than Francine at the front desk.
I believe he may have also used the phrase, one of the muckety-mucks.
That's possibly. Yeah. This is an exact quote. I don't have a primary source on this. All conjecture. But he doesn't want to deal with Francine because she's probably the reason his account goes into delinquency. How can she bloody type with those stubby fingers? So Francine, she gets on the phone and she pages some low-level corporate guy to come down and humor Seymour.
As you would.
Right. So the guy comes down and asks Seymour what he can help him with. "Well, I've only gone and invented the mobile phone, haven't I?" And the man asks, "Well, what is that? Sorry, what does this thing do?" "I can make calls from anywhere." "Okay, well, how does it work?" "I don't bloody know. Look, I'm the idea guy. Have you nobody back there who can tinker?" So Seymour is shown the door very quickly after this public display. But he has a plan B. He says, "I'm going to circumvent the bureaucracy that is British Telecom. They're hostile toward innovators." Now, not in those words, Chris. It comes out more like, "Ah!" So Seymour's new strategy is to get his invention on the 9 o'clock news. Now, that might sound lofty to folks like you and me, Chris, but Seymour has a friend, although, to be honest, he's more of an acquaintance who tolerates Seymour on the bus. That's the only place they see each other.
I understand.
His name is Theodore, and Theodore is the manager of BBC Television Center. And it's mostly a property management situation. But Theodore, he's a popular face around the facility, and folks there quite like Theodore, and they even value his opinion. In fact, just that year, a certain Top of the Pops dance troupe would have been known as Legs Limited, but Theodore pointed out that that made them sound like a wheelchair basketball team. So Legs & Co. they became.
What? You lost me on that last part there, Steve.
So Seymour slurs out his pitch to Theodore the next morning on the bus. Theodore is on his way into work, and Seymour is just on his way home. Seymour hands over his phone in the bag, and Theodore agrees to try to get this new invention on the news that evening. But then Theodore has a better idea. You know who would love this, he thinks? Kids.
Okay.
And let's face it, there's been so much going on at Television Center these days that the kids don't love. Anytime there's a studio audience full of kids and they leave here, well, let's just say I dread opening the suggestion box. So Theodore instead shares this item with the producers of Blue Peter. And can we see the still shot again, the close-up of this contraption? That's the only possible way I can imagine that this object ended up on national television. But surprisingly, Chris, and we're going to take a look at something else in just a second here. Surprisingly, Chris, I'm completely wrong. This backstory is not at all accurate, and that thing we just saw actually works. So in fairness to the visionaries behind it, I say let's see this thing in action.
Before we do, Steve, I just have to point out that your story is sadly similar to a story in my life where I had the idea for the GoPro camera years before it came out. And when I told my wife about it, she told me it was stupid and nobody would ever want one of those.
Ooh.
That's a true story, unlike true story.
Unbelievable. All right, let's see the first.
I did not know,
mobile phone.
much like Seymour, I did not know how to make all that technology work. But I knew if you could do it, it would be very successful.
There'd be a demand.
Yes.
Indeed.
All at the same time as I'm speaking to you. So first of all, to make sure I've got a line, dial 0. That's the same as picking up a handset. That's it, I've got the line. Now, his number, 84. And it's ringing in the studio.
Hello, John Noakes here.
Hello, John. Fancy seeing you. Or rather hearing you. I can't see you at all, actually.
All right. Now, it might seem odd that we watch something like that. We usually talk about made-for-TV movies.
This doesn't seem odd to me at all.
Media
actually.
curiosity. Well, it might seem odd to the audience, but the reason why is we're gonna dive into something else in just a moment. The reason we watched that clip is because Peter Purvis, the man with the purse phone,
Yeah.
he's the narrator in the short film we're about to take a look at. It's called Robbie, and it was made in 1979. Now, not long ago, as we mentioned, we did watch another public information film. That
Wait,
one was
are we
on.
done talking about the mobile phone?
No, we can. We can continue.
Because I have a question about it.
All right.
Can I use it to exchange nude photos with a lady friend?
Not yet. That is that's a more advanced stage.
I don't see this technology catching on until they clear that hurdle. But
Now, the last public information film was made for television.
okay.
The one about household safety.
Oh, so this is more of a thing they'd show before a movie.
No, this was actually made to air in schools
Oh, okay.
across Britain.
Got it.
So let's join Peter Purvis, who we just saw demonstrating the first mobile phone in Britain. Let's join him as he tells us a little about the titular Robbie. That's the name of the film.
A right terror was Robbie. Always into something, know what I mean? Got stuck up a tree. The fireman had to come to get him down.
Yeah. Meantime, an unsupervised chip pen is burning down an entire council estate.
I've never heard of a boy getting stuck up a tree.
It's uncommon, but as we learn more about Robbie, I think there are assumptions that can be made that are not spelled out
Okay, yeah.
in the material. Yeah, the fire brigade's tied up, and places are just bursting into flames all over the place. But they're carefully setting up a ladder, so this carrot can get back to safety.
I mean, just go back down the same way you came up. That's how it works.
That'd be one way of doing it. Already, Chris, I don't like this kid, Robbie.
I got you.
Okay, let's hear a little more about Robbie.
Thought he'd rescue a stray dog one day. Well, It looked like a stray, but the blooming dog lived right the other side of town, so Robbie got completely lost, of course. And his mum ended up fetching him from the nick.
Yeah. Kind of a dim bulb, Robbie.
Yeah.
Now, if that went way too fast, because I had to watch that a couple times to follow what occurred there.
Well, he followed a dog across London.
Yeah.
Is what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, he spotted a dog walking down the street and probably thought, well, this dog isn't on a lead.
Right.
Must be a stray. Which, fair play to Robbie, but it turns out this dog is just on his way home. I guess he walked himself to a grooming appointment. So Robbie followed him all the way to the dog's destination, or as I call it, his dog's destination.
Was in the mud. There were two big things in Robbie's life. One was football. He wasn't half bad, they said. Not bad at all for an 8-year-old. One or two people reckoned he stood a chance of making professional one day. And the other thing was trains. Crazy about trains he was.
Okay.
One or two people thought he had a chance to go pro. What are the chances they're both his parents?
His other interest, Chris? Trains.
Sure.
Okay, that might explain Robbie's challenges in life. So, this film was made to warn a certain segment of the British population against the dangers ahead. As I said, this was meant to be shown in schools, but perhaps it wasn't meant to be shown in every classroom.
I got you.
But I could be wrong here. Maybe Robbie's interest in trains begins and ends with that book we saw him flipping through.
They probably could have saved time and just shown this film on the short bus, is what you're saying.
Sort of, yeah. Maybe it's the wonder of travel.
I mean, look, I'm fascinated with old fighter planes and race cars, so I get it. I get why someone would like trains. So maybe I'm falling into the category that you're.
I don't know. May I suggest one other thing? Maybe it's the magic and mystery of getting on a vehicle and seeing the English countryside go by for hours and hours until you're in another town, another place, and in the mind of a child, a world away.
Well, let's hope a dog doesn't get on the train, because then he might follow it on there.
So I'm going to give Robbie the benefit of the doubt here.
Robbie read about trains and watched them on the telly and went down to the station to see them now and then. So one way and another, he knew a bit about the terrific changes there'd been. Automatic signalling, rails welded into long sections to give a nice smooth ride, and all sorts of brand new things and brand new trains coming.
Okay, so forget everything I just said. Now, remember Robbie's other interest?
Soccer.
Yeah.
Or football, as they call it here.
Yeah, now I think his interest in soccer is just a thematic device to make the events ahead all the more dramatic.
Okay.
Those interests rarely intersect. Athletics and train spotting.
Right.
So let's check in on Robbie as he shows off his skills on the pitch.
A dead easy penalty. And then, of course, he blew it, didn't he?
Oh,
Nearly
boy.
died of shame.
I hope there were no scouts there.
Made up for it later, though. Smacked in that goal just before the final whistle. And you know, he could have sworn he saw them cheer. Well, nearly. Robbie didn't know it, of course, but that was the last goal he'd ever score. Come to that, the last game he'd ever play. Because things went wrong on the way home, you see.
What happens on the way home? He gets married? How many times do we see that happen in comedy, Chris? Perhaps it's also true in the world of sport. I don't know. We'll find out in a bit. But, Chris, you noticed something in that last scene. So let's see some of that one more time. Do you want to tell the folks what to look for?
Well,
Made up for
just watch when the ball goes through, when he scores his goal here.
it later, though. Smacked in that goal just before the final whistle. And
There's
you know,
no net on that goal.
Right.
Is he just in a poor area? Or I played soccer as a lad not long after this was made, like maybe 10 years or so. Was the soccer net invented in those 10 years?
No, I believe it existed.
Yeah.
So those four, after this, we saw those four kids walking home. And they are Robbie, his brother, their sister, and Robbie's teammate, Jake.
Right.
And on their path, there's a fence to prevent pedestrians from crossing the railway. Now, some local vandals, they've created a breach in the fence
Yeah.
to give themselves a shortcut where?
Across the railroad tracks, I believe.
So they get to the pub.
Oh, to the pub. Well,
Yeah.
of course, yeah.
So the other kids want to use the shortcut and walk across the tracks. Now, Robbie, of all people, says, well, I don't think that's the best idea. But Robbie's sister has a tool in her arsenal that she knows she can use to convince Robbie to do anything.
Robbie argued, it's just plain stupid going across a railway. You chicken then, asked Bert. Chicken soccer star? Sally joined in. Chicks United, bottom of the 4th Division. Oh, look, he's going all red. Oh, all right, shouted Robbie. That's
All right,
said
sad,
Bert.
but it was a different time, Chris.
Yeah.
A lot of humans still displayed a toxic anthro-supremacy that resulted in a good deal of poultry phobia. Jake has some difficulty crossing the tracks. He's Robbie's teammate we saw in tow.
Yeah. I had him labeled as a troublemaker the second I set eyes on him.
Oh, boy.
I'm not sure why.
Luckily, Robbie is there to help, so let's just watch as this scene plays out. The other way, just... Yeah.
Now, just to be clear on what happened there, he was able to get out of the way of the first train because anyone would have been. But there was a second train coming in the opposite direction. That's what got him. Did I interrupt? Were you going to comment on that?
No.
Okay, all right.
But something terrible has occurred to Robbie. We don't know exactly what it is yet.
Yeah. I mean, you assume he's dead, but...
Yeah, well, as Robbie's mom prepares the tea, she meets some unexpected
Are you sure she wasn't
visitors.
making chips?
Well, that could have been part of tea.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I got you. I thought you meant the beverage. You meant the meal.
Yes.
Yeah, gotcha.
Mrs. Hayward?
Yes?
Mrs. Ruth Hayward?
Yes? But what have you been up to? Where are the others?
The lads had a bit of a shock, love.
What do you mean? What's going on?
Do you think we could talk inside?
How should I know? We've never met. But come on in and we'll all find out together. Yeah. So let's see, as the two police officers enter and try to discuss
God's
things
sake, what's happened?
with Robbie's mom.
Where's Robbie? Where's Sally?
Your Robbie's had an accident, I'm afraid.
Oh, turns out I can.
Bit of a nasty one. No, he's alive, but he's very poorly. It happened on the railway.
Where is he? I've got to see him.
No, that wouldn't be a good idea, love. Not just now. He's in hospital. You can't see him, not yet.
Who says I can't see him? I'm his mother. I've got a right.
Sorry, love. Look, he's badly hurt. You'd only be in the way.
Oh, dear God. Is it as bad as that?
I know it's hard, but all we can do is wait. They've promised to phone the moment there's any news. Tell you what, I'll put the kettle on.
Cup of tea.
Can I clear up what just happened there?
Sure.
Did they just tell the mom she couldn't go to the hospital because she'd be in the way?
Yes. Well, there were concerns that she might be too hysterical and them not be able to perform the procedures.
She was perfectly composed throughout that entire scene.
But if she
I
knew, had she known the severity of her son's position, she might react differently.
Okay.
Now, Chris, you noticed something in the opening credits.
Yeah, I did.
And we want to go full screen on this, Jim, if you don't mind. There you go.
Yeah, as you know, there were two police persons who showed up there.
Yes.
And apparently they have separate ranks for male and female police constables. The W literally stands for woman police constable, which seems a bit, I don't know what word you would use, sexist, I guess.
But is that what it really stands for?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's, well, how else are you going to pay him 30% less, Steve? You can't give him the same rank. They'd expect the same pay.
All right. So as we rejoin the motion picture, Robbie's mom, she still has questions.
I bet.
But what happened?
It's best not to go into all that now.
I've got to know. What the hell happened?
Well, we haven't got...
What happened? Well, the copper didn't tell it all, of course. But Robbie had lost both feet and broken half the bones in his body.
Yikes.
Yeah. Can we see a little more of this?
Oh, dear Christ.
And Sally was in hospital too, they said. No, she wasn't hurt. But all of a sudden, she couldn't speak, you see. Not a word. She just lay there and stared. Didn't seem to notice anything.
No, she couldn't handle Robbie getting all the medical attention.
You know, Steve, they say, can we pause it?
Yeah.
They say that if you have a bully, you should fight back. You know, punch them in the nose, and then they'll stop bullying you. But another tactic, as we see here, is get yourself run over by a train and guilt them into stopping them bullying you.
All right, just a little more.
A bit of a scare.
Bert ought to drink up his tea and keep warm, they said. He'd had a nasty fright.
Sorry, love. They asked me to bring these back.
Okay, stop. Yeah, and there's more in the van. For some reason, he also had with him his roller skates, his kick drum, his Nordic track, and a note he wrote last week expressing his desire to make homemade wine. So Peter Purvis, he lists a few things about trains that, had Robbie been aware, he may have been able to make a better decision. We're going to hear some of this.
The sound of another traveling on the other track. Or how you can get trapped in points. Because
See,
they're
now, can we
often
pause
worked
it there? Now we're making light of this, you know, but when I saw that, I was like, yeah, that really could, imagine you just walking along and that thing could trap your foot in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be dangerous. So, I mean, you could once you see this, you could easily avoid the, what do they call them? The switch things?
Yeah, switches.
Yeah, you could easily avoid those to avoid this problem. So I think that's actually really good advice.
That's good to know. That's
Yeah.
that's a good way of educating kids on how to cross railroad tracks safely.
Yeah. I mean, as a kid, you're going to be crossing railroad tracks. Even as an adult, it's going to come up in your life. So it's good to know how to do it safely, I think.
Okay, do you want to see the rest of this?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah.
automatically from miles away. Or that a train can't stop anything like as quickly as a car. Poor old Robbie was right about one thing at any rate. Anyone who makes a hole in a railway fence or breaks it down is just plain stupid. Boy, girl, or grown-up, 5, 15, or 50 makes no odds, they're stupid. Because it's holes like these that hurt and kill. Not just older kids, but the family dog, or the baby brother or sister who don't know where they're walking, or where their walk is going to end.
Again, that really made me think because, sure, I would chop a hole in a fence to get to the pub, absolutely. But once you think that maybe a dog could get caught in the crossfire there, that would make you think twice. So, yeah. That's all I had to say. I actually think this is a very valuable video.
Well, you've learned something, and I think you're stating a case you joked about earlier that this was definitely made for you. This has affected your life and your future decision making.
It has.
So let's see some of the epilogue.
Robbie still keeps his boots. Nobody knows why. Not even Robbie. After all, they'll never be any use to him.
Oh, Jesus.
Chances are he'll spend
That's
the
a bit
rest of
harsh.
his life in his wheelchair.
Well, on a brighter note, Robbie was able to continue his athletic career. He went on to become a superstar point guard for Legs Limited.
It's the second time you brought that up. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, well, that was for the people who were paying attention. Is there anything we didn't talk about you might like to talk about?
Well, you keep making this reference to leg something, and I saw you sent a photo.
It'll be explained. The people already know. It's already been explained.
So we're not going to see that photo that you sent.
We are going to see it. They've seen it. It's useless talking about it.
Oh, see, I had a bit prepared for that photo, and then because it didn't come up, I didn't do the bit.
Is that true?
Yes, that's absolutely true. Why do you think I'm asking you about it?
Okay, let's bring up the Legs and Co. image.
You can't do the
we'll
bit
see that.
now.
We'll see it the first time. They'll see it again.
So we have to edit this out, though.
No, we don't.
I don't want to do the bit now because it feels too contrived.
Okay, so here's a repeat performance of the Legs and Co. photograph. There you go.
I'm not going to do the bit.
Have at it, Chris.
I'm not going to do the bit now. It's too contrived.
You're serious?
I'm dead serious. You know how this show works.
Yes, I do.
It's not a real
That's
conversation.
part of the
It's the artifice of a conversation, as we've discussed.
Right.
So we can't now make it. We can't. It's breaking the fourth wall. Is what
Okay,
it's
well,
doing.
I didn't know what the bit was, so.
It's just look. No one's to blame here. It's just a miscommunication. That's
Okay,
all.
all right.
Yeah.
I was not communicated with. You're right.
Oh, really? Okay. When have we ever sent something to the chat that doesn't then get shown on screen? This is the first time knowing of this.
Because it's for post. I left the spot there that you filled with, I don't know what's going on, or something like that.
Yeah, because
That
it didn't
was the
come up
spot
on screen. That's
No,
why I didn't know what was going on.
Okay, but it's not.
That's not how we normally do
that
it.
pause was there so it can go in and post.
Normally, the stuff that goes in post is stuff we think of.
It would have interrupted.
Ex post
ironically,
facto.
ironically, it would have interrupted the flow. Had I said, "Okay, Jim, can you pull up that picture?" now?"
I'm not blaming you. I don't know why you insist on blaming me for this.
I'm not blaming anybody for anything.
All right.
So okay.
It was a funny bit, though. You just have to take my word on that.
In that case, I guess we did it.
I guess.
Right? Okay. For Chris Bergani, Jim Corhan, I'm Steve Rees. Ask me.
Askiwawa.
Holy Magano.
Whatever the name of Robbie's soccer team was.
All right. Eat 'em raw. We did it, sir.